You said it was only going to cost my deductible if we went through the insurance process. What is this $500 bill for rusted out exhaust vents? What is this $400 bill for rotten wood? What is this $800 bill for rotten siding? Man, you took advantage of me. Why did you lie to me? Alright guys, so in today's video, I'm going to be going over the hidden associated costs when it comes to roofing and what a lot of people may not want to bring up when they initially talk to you because they want to keep the excitement of, if it's the insurance route, hey, all you got to pay is your deductible, we're going to get everything else covered for you. Or, hey, this is our price, but when we run into issues, we're going to hit you with some surprise fees. So, number one hidden cost I'm going to be going over is proper home maintenance. Now, there's so many different things that can be affected when we're doing a roofing project. Rotten siding can come up because what we're supposed to do as roofers is replace flashing whenever we do a new roof, right? So, rotten siding is going to play a big factor into that because if we're replacing step flashing, that might get torn up in the process. So in addition to rotten decking, another thing to watch out for is rusted exhaust vents on top of the roof. So if these aren't properly maintained, it is steel. If they're not painted every so often, once that sun beats the paint off of them, the rain gets to them, now it can lead to corrosion and rust, and a lot of times those have to get replaced. Now, going in the inside of the attic, there's another few things we want to watch out for that can bring up hidden costs. Number one could be rotten decking. A lot of the times if prior leaks were repaired on the outside, but the inside's still stained or wasn't dealt with initially, that's got to be dealt with whenever we're building a new roof because we don't want to nail down to something that's not structurally intact. Another thing you can check while you're inside the attic is spray foam insulation. Because let's say you have something called a power vent and it's not working anymore and you have spray foam insulation, so there's no need to have ventilation anymore. If we're removing that and then we have to replace the decking, that spray foam insulation underneath that decking is going to get removed, which may actually void your warranty. So that may cause you to incur costs as far as having the insulation people come back out and refinish the inside of the attic. Something else you may want to look out for too that we've run into recently is when electrical wires or HVAC lines are running right underneath the deck or stapled to the deck. That's actually against code, but it does happen on the occasion. And yeah, you guessed it. If we're replacing a roof and driving nails through the decking and it pops and hits one of those HVAC lines or electrical wires, that's going to be a huge issue. That's going to incur more costs, and it's not something that's necessarily the roofer's fault unless they didn't do a proper check and you had that dealt with beforehand. And now the solutions for those. I kind of touched on one. One of the big ones is obviously whenever somebody comes out to do a roof inspection, they need to go in your attic. It's just critical to identify a lot of the problems that I just brought up. So through proper documentation, they need to be able to go up in your attic, take overviews, walk around, inspect the decking underneath, make sure it's not rotten, make sure they can anticipate those costs, and also check to see what kind of insulation you have up there, because just like with the spray foam insulation, there's other things that may need to be adjusted in an estimate to properly reflect how the roof is built or how the insulation is laid out inside the home. And then also, bingo, if there's anything like electrical wiring or HVAC lines that are ran parallel to the decking, those may need to be moved beforehand before completing the roof project. Now, number two, the hidden costs can be code items. So, depending on when your last roof was constructed, your roof may not be up to code. One of the most popular things is drip edge. Drip edge has only been code in Georgia since about 2012. So if your roof is older than say 12, 13 years old, there's a good chance you may not have drip edge on your home. So drip edge, I'll put up a picture so you can see exactly what it is. I know I've gone over it a couple times, but it's an L piece of metal that is nailed down to the decking that overhangs your fascia. Couple functions it has: prevents wind-driven rain. I know pest control guys install this as well. It prevents pests from eating the top of the fascia and being able to enter the attic. And it also keeps a nice clean edge on the shingles. So now you don't have what you can commonly see on older roofs where installers leave 3 inches of shingles overhanging to try to prevent that wind-driven rain. Now it doesn't need to be more than 1.25 inches of overhang, and it can be cut nice and clean. Another code item, ice and water is something that gets installed in the valleys to cover up that natural gap between where the decking stops in a valley. And we also wrap all the roof penetrations, so pipe boots, exhaust vents, chimneys. But the critical thing is making sure it's in your valleys, because that's where you're going to get the most water flow. One of the other things that is not talked about enough, especially if you do a lot of work in Atlanta or on older homes, is something called plank decking, which is where you have 1x6s or 1x8s that was originally used as decking surface to nail down the shingles. Issue with this is, and it's in most manufacturer specs as well, is the gaps in between those decks, because obviously wood expands and contracts over time. So if you've ever measured a 1x6, the true measurement's about 5.5. And if it has any more than an 1/8 to 1/4 inch gap, a lot of the times when you're re-roofing, those nails can miss the decking, and obviously that's not going to have a proper hold, and the shingles can blow off over time. What code requires is to do a redeck, or per manufacturer specs to do a redeck, which means laying a layer of OSB over the entire deck and nailing that down. That way you have no more gaps, and that way you can move forward with the felting and the whole roofing process. With all that being said, if this is an insurance claim, this is something that can potentially be covered under your policy, and I cannot preach this enough. If you are moving forward with an insurance claim and you are not super confident about what is in your policy, please reach out to your agent and let them inform you. Or if you have a good roofing contractor that does a lot of insurance work, he should be able to read your policy and let you know what is actually covered. Henceforth, no more extra hidden costs. Because a lot of the time, depending on how the policy is written, it can actually even cover rot. What that means is, during a roofing project, if we come across some additional decking that may be rotten, a lot of the times you can get it covered under your policy. So it's not an additional cost you need to incur doing an insurance claim. But if it's retail, need to make sure they get in the attic and document everything ahead of time, and make sure when you're looking over their paperwork to ask before you sign, hey, I want to know what other costs may be associated with this project. And it's really, really important that they have a line item for, hey, if we have this much extra decking that needs to be used, how much per sheet is it going to cost me? How much per plank is it going to cost me? And that way, you already have an idea of what additional costs you may incur during this project. Now, I do want to be clear though, on the flip side, construction is construction, and there can be things that we cannot predict ahead of time that may need to be dealt with after the fact. But a lot of the time, if you're dealing with a reputable contractor and you're not trying to go for the lowest bid, a lot of the times they can work with you, because I'm telling you, if you nickel and dime somebody and problems arise, you're going to bet they're going to come at you pretty hard for any kind of change orders, which is what happens when you come across something that was not anticipated, and money has to be dealt out to make sure those costs are covered, because a contractor can't take everything on. However, when you're dealing with a reputable contractor who you picked at a fair price, they're usually going to have a little bit more leeway to work with you. So, if there's anything y'all have run into as homeowners or contractors that you think I missed, please drop a comment below. I want to make sure I address all the issues. But that's a lot of the things I've run into, and a lot of the things that I discuss with homeowners beforehand to make sure we're squared away from the very beginning. We set those expectations, and there's not a ton of surprises when it comes to the project or afterward. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for the next one.